Denver City Council and Mayor Michael Hancock are working on proposals that would protect individuals from federal immigration enforcement policies. According to the Denver Post, Mayor Hancock is drafting an executive order creating a legal fund to assist immigrants during court removal proceedings. Meanwhile, Denver City Council members are working on a more stringent city ordinance that would stop the Denver Sheriff's Department from notifying federal authorities when ICE detainees will be released from jail. David, we've talked about this issue before, but this is the first time we've seen both the mayor and the council putting a really concerted effort towards this. They're not sitting on the sidelines on this issue. Do you think this is what the city of Denver needs, and are they representing the constituency well?
Well, they're certainly representing some of their constituents, including vocal ones who are very strong advocates for illegal aliens. For the mayor's plan for this legal defense fund, he's talking about raising money through private donations, which is fine if he wants to. That's what he wants to do. I don't think taxpayer money should be spent on it unless the city council votes for it. Part of our American system of government is the legislature is in charge of appropriating money. On the money they're going to lose from cutoffs of Department of Justice grants, some of it they're clearly going to lose. Attorney General Sessions has been criticized for adding conditions to federal grants that aren't in the statute for it. And he can't legally do that. It's one thing if Congress says you only get the grant if you do the following, but I don't think the Attorney General can on his own add conditions to other programs. I saw Kevin Flynn, who, former member of this table, in the Denver City Council. Of course, he can't come on this channel because Channel 8 made him sign a non-compete clause. But he explained that this proposal, which is likely going to pass the council, the only practical effect of it is it adds to the class of people who get the catch and release proposed policy of the Denver jail, heroin dealers. That's, as Kevin's explanation, that's the only difference we make. It is adds heroin dealing to the list of things. Well, just because we caught you doing it doesn't mean we're going to tell ICE about that, because then you might get deported for that. And Kevin's view was, he's sympathetic to illegal aliens in general, but not the ones who are heroin vendors.
Eric, we're used to hearing about executive orders from D.C. I can't remember the last time I heard about it here in Denver, especially when you have a council and a mayor that usually work pretty well together in agreement. Were you surprised to see at least this initial proposal idea come out as a potential executive order?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think Michael Hancock has been trying to massage his way through this issue ever since Donald Trump was elected president. I want to be brief and really give the floor here to Noelle, because she's written a couple of stories that are, directly why we're talking about this for the Post, written for the Post this week. I think this whole thing is largely symptomatic of a couple bigger issues. I mean, Denver is just a microcosm of what's going on in big city after big city around the country. So much of it is just the lack of trust in a President Trump coming out of so many constituencies, particularly Hispanic American constituencies, but broad liberal constituencies. I think you have to be careful. I mean, there's some people, per Noelle's stories, who were released without notifying ICE that they were being released, who were bad actors, and who 95% of the voters of this country would say, if they're here illegally and exhibiting this kind of conduct, say goodbye and get them back across the border. So, Trump has tapped into a vein, as we all know, that is a vein with some traction there. Secondly, lastly, it just, at some point, and the stars are not lining up in Washington where you can imagine this happening, at some point we do need some real immigration reform in this country, where you let some of these people out of the shadows, you take this shadow over this class of people, and yet you do get control of your borders and don't have a completely open immigration policy, which many people on the left seem to think is what we need.
Noelle, as Eric alluded to, you wrote some great pieces on this and really did the hard work for us. I get to write a couple sentences for the prompter. You actually did the hard work in the reporting. The floor is yours. What do we need to know about these stories?
Well, the big sticking point, the mayor and the council both kind of have the same goal in the mind, in which is to appease a very strong, vocal Latino community in Denver, and to frankly give the middle finger to the Trump administration. And we don't agree with where you're going here. And so they're kind of on the same page. I think the mayor may be trying to keep us out of less trouble with Jeff Sessions, who yesterday wrote a memo and sent letters to like Baltimore, Albuquerque, a couple of California police departments saying, hey, you want to be a part of this public safety program training to curb violence in your cities, I need you to answer these 3 questions. And they were all about ICE's relationship with jails. And so in Denver, the big difference between mayor and council is this release notification to ICE. The courts have told jailers you can't keep people in jail any longer than necessary. So if you're in jail and you've made bond, they have to let you out according to court decisions. ICE would prefer that you hold them an extra 48 hours so they can come pick them up on an immigration detainer. Denver's jail doesn't even have room to do that. Denver's not going to do that. But right now what Denver does do is send a fax to ICE, inmate Phillips here made bond, we're expecting to release her at 10 p.m. And they may not know that inmate Phillips has made bond until 5 p.m., so ICE only gets like 5 hours notice and probably doesn't have the manpower to be sitting outside the downtown detention center to grab the inmate. But that's the big sticking point, I think, between the mayor's proposal and city council's proposed ordinance. And it'll be interesting to see who's willing to come to the table and sit and hash out a plan for Denver, because I think it's fair to ask, is it wise to have an executive order? Because he can do it. They can pass an ordinance and he can write an executive order, and we have 2 things. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Patty, this is clearly a big issue in Denver, but we're used to seeing big projects of the mayor's office and the city council chambers. This is one of the big headlines are getting over a really emotional issue in Denver. How do you think it's all going to pan out?
Well, clearly we need an updated policy anyway, because anything based on faxes is not exactly ready for this decade. I mean, really, who's last seen a fax that isn't about getting your roof redone? So that's number one. The feds definitely need to update their policies, and they're doing it in a very weird way right now, coming down on 4 cities, and Denver certainly could be one of them in the next few weeks. So there are 2 weeks before this proposed ordinance is introduced to the full council. I think we are going to see a lot of working behind the scenes to kind of come up with a compromise that gets rid of the heroin people, that maybe replaces the faxes with carrier pigeons to slow things down. There's going to be a lot of maneuvering, because the mayor's administration certainly didn't want this proposal to come and box them into a corner with the feds. So they're going to try to come up with some compromise everyone can live with.